Hey guys, how are y'all doing?
Hello.
So everybody had a good weekend?
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
Busy, but you know,
Getting
Yeah.
ready for Christmas and everything?
yes.
I don't have anything to do to get ready for Christmas because we have the most low-key Christmases. Like we haven't done gifts for almost 25 years.
Oh wow. Yeah,
So
that's how me and my husband are, but
yeah, we
the
don't have to go
kids.
out and buy
Yeah.
any gifts. And yeah, a lot of it was because I was sick and never felt good. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's nice. It's nice to not have to worry about shopping when
Yeah.
things are
Well,
crazy.
it's funny. I really haven't done a lot yet because I'm a last minute type person. So, I
Well,
and I and my most of my kids are teenagers and they just want money anyway, so
right,
Yep.
I
right.
don't have very much to do.
Yeah.
And then we decided with our with my in-laws that we weren't going to exchange gifts this year. It just, it's more important just to spend time together. And
Right.
so anyway, on to the book.
Oh, well, I was going to share a story, a funny story.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So this just happened this today, and I just was cracking up. I mean, you guys may not think it's funny, but I thought it was hilarious. So we go to church on Sunday, but our church is kind of a satellite off of like a bigger, huge church. And so we decided to go to the main church today. And there are people there I hadn't seen for a very long time, right? One of them is this young man. He's like 33. He works in the at the coffee area where everyone gets their coffee, and he I know we know him very well. He calls me Mama Lynn, and I hadn't seen him in quite a few months. And so I come walking in with my husband and wave at him, and he just his jaw practically drops. He runs over, gives me this big old hug, and he looks me up and down because I'd lost a lot of weight since he saw me last. And I have never been cussed at so much in church. I swear.
Okay.
He was like dropping F bombs and shit. Yeah, like I'm like, oh my gosh.
I'm surprised lightning didn't
Oh
strike
my
him.
goodness.
Like, are you supposed to talk like that in church? He goes, I don't care. Look at you.
Oh.
Wow.
You're like, oh gosh.
I
Please
thought
don't
it
say
was
that.
kind of hilarious.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah, he called me a hot mama.
Oh.
So that kind of made my day, but man, did it make me laugh. Oh. It's like, okay, I hope lightning doesn't strike.
Yeah. It's like I'm gonna step away. I'm gonna go over here.
we used to have this we used to go to this church for basketball, and we weren't like members of the church or anything, but we just went for basketball, and it was attached to the church. So I think a lot of times people would forget that it was like
Right.
part of the church, and as you can imagine, in a gym, a gymnasium where
Sure.
people are playing hardcore basketball, yeah, there was a lot of things said, and we'd be like,
Like, you're
okay
in
now.
church.
Oh.
Yeah, you in
All
a
right.
Jesus gym. You better behave.
That's right. So that was my funny story.
Oh, that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that, what you have done to get that response, you should be patting yourself on the back.
Oh my gosh.
Congratulations.
Like, I swear, it made me feel so good. And yeah, just because most of the people in my life see me. And
Yeah.
so they don't necessarily, I mean, they notice, but it's not as extreme. But yeah, it was pretty extreme for him and his
And
reaction.
you don't even notice on yourself either.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna
sometimes
say from
having
day to day.
somebody, yeah, like somebody to actually see it, and then it kind of reminds you how far you've come, even though
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, but at the same time, you're just with yourself all the time, and so you don't really notice. So that's
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
great.
so it's pretty cool. Yeah, actually, he wasn't the only one that commented. I had somebody else who hadn't seen me for a while and he came over and said hi to us and he looked at me and he goes, "Oh my gosh." And he looked at his wife and he goes, "I think we need to start watching her videos."
Oh.
Because he already knew I had a channel.
Yeah.
He had come over and helped me with some audiovisual stuff, and he's got his own YouTube channel as well about a totally different topic. But I talked to him before about carnivore, and so yeah, he said his wife says, "Yeah, I think we do." So
maybe there'll be a New Year's resolution for that couple. You know,
yeah, you never know. Never know who you're affecting, and you never know who's watching you either. Because I don't really tell a whole lot of people, but if they're as good of detectives as I like to think that I am, they could figure it out. You know, go to one platform and see me link a video, and like I could trace it back and I would be all over it. But
of course, your name is in your YouTube handle, so they could find you.
Well, that's not my last name though.
Oh, okay.
That's my middle name.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra. I see your Sandra's note there.
Yeah. So it would be more difficult. Like they probably wouldn't be able to find me just by searching for my first and last name.
Okay.
So
that's right.
And I even changed it on my Facebook. So my name on there is Kimberly Lane. That's my first and middle name.
Yeah.
But anyway. Cool. All right. Let's see here. Let me open up the book. So we started on chapter 15. We did 15, 16, 17 this week. And as Lynn said in a text message earlier this week, chapter 15 could have been like, we could probably talk for an hour on that alone.
Yeah.
So, and Lynn has prepared some slides for us, in case we need them during our discussion. So,
yeah. So if we just happen to decide that we want to discuss them, we can pull them up.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so much better than just holding up a book.
Yeah.
Well, I was really shocked about something, but I'm sure you'll get to it. But there's one thing, and I was just like,
oh,
really?
Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. We need to start out a new thing here. So each week we need to say straight out of the gate, what was the most shocking thing to you out of what you read?
We have to narrow it down to one.
Let's narrow it down to one just for this
there
fun
was a
little
lot.
thing here.
Well,
okay,
mine
so, Carrie,
was
yours?
The stevia and how it affected insulin.
My God,
had no clue. I was like, I was just mind blown.
What are we doing? What am I even doing?
Yeah.
For me, it was
the taste of stevia.
For me, it was the agave nectar.
Like, oh really?
Yeah, because I mean, of course, after last week, we read all about fructose and how horrible fructose is, and it says that the agave nectar is like 80% fructose. And I mean,
to me, that's not surprising because it's from a fruit, right?
It does make sense, but it just kind of really struck me as like, now I'm associating fructose with fatty liver disease.
Yes.
And I remember when everything was all about like, well, just put agave nectar instead, use that instead. It's like, oh my gosh, what are we doing to ourselves?
I know. I never got on that agave nectar train because when that all started, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I remember hearing about it. I didn't care. I would just be like, give me full sugar of everything. I don't care. And I had no clue what I was doing to my body. Right. But that's also when I would say, and, other nurses would say this too, and doctors actually, let the patient have a piece of birthday cake and we'll just give them extra insulin. So, right. I mean, we're a little ignorant back then.
Right. That's why you've got a sliding scale, right?
Yeah. But anyway, so back then I was just like, yeah, sugar's the best. Give me full fat, full sugar, everything. But then the next, when I did start keto and stuff, I started listening to Dr. Berry right out of the gate. And he was like, all that stuff's garbage. So I didn't really have an experience with it. But I had been doing stevia because of, him giving that a kind of a half nod of approval.
Well, I mean, it was the whole thing with these sweeteners is that they were going from the artificial to what's considered natural and plant-based. And so I think that was what people were trying to do, was trying to be healthier.
Mhm.
by getting rid of the artificial ones like the aspartame,
Yeah.
but not really. And of course, that was the whole thing was, well, if it's plant-based, if it's based on a natural product, then therefore it must be healthy.
But
Yeah.
sugar is
Healthier.
too, though. That's the problem. Sugar
Right.
is a plant-based natural, so it's sort of like, basically you're going to pay the piper if you eat sweet stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, there's just no getting around it. If you're using a lot of sweeteners of any kind, you are causing issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I think very moderate amounts, very small amounts here and there probably aren't, especially of stevia. I mean, probably aren't going to hurt anything, maybe even of sugar, but
But what's crazy
using
is
it as replacement. Yeah.
it said that it raised your insulin higher than
Yes.
table sugar. So I'm like, well, should I just have a little bit of table sugar in my coffee? Like, I got to have something, folks.
Right.
Get rid
Well,
of
I mean, it
everything.
all points to the whole
Mhm.
point of all these chapters that we covered today, and that is raising glucose and raising insulin are not necessarily correlated.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
And so
Not at
all
all.
the
If you
sweeteners were
eat
chosen.
something, period, your insulin is going to raise. That's what I'm learning.
That's what I get out of it too, that everything is going to raise your insulin. It's just a matter
Except
of
fat.
how much. Yes. And these sweeteners. And so what everybody was basing everything on the glycemic index. And if it doesn't raise your blood sugar, then it must be healthy. But that's completely not the case. In fact, he was even stating that basically don't worry so much about your blood sugar, just focus on your insulin. So that, I mean, this has been, everything about this has been so eye-opening.
Yeah, it really has. I see where the person was like, that book was life-changing for me.
Mhm.
But it's also exhausting at the same time, because you're just like, I'm out here trying to do the best I can, and I'm making these little tweaks and I've noticed a huge improvement in my health, but we need to take this a step further, and
yeah. Well, at some point, I mean, I think that maybe the results that we see are in contrast to our previous diet. And so it's an improvement. And that's as I was reading through these chapters, that especially the one on protein that we'll get to, that's what I was thinking, is that, okay, well, I'm having such good success, but it's probably because I was eating such garbage before and a lot of processed. But based on what he's saying, it's like I'm thinking, well, there's bound to be a time where I'm going to max out the benefit of what I'm doing and going to have to make some tweaks and adjustments to it.
Yeah, based on what I was seeing, I mean, really, I don't know, because I did actually read one extra chapter by accident, but I didn't read anything. I didn't read anything that would give it away. But I'm thinking that the high, especially because he did mention about the low carb, high fat. He did talk about that a little bit. And the high fat, I think probably what it means is that I'll have to really increase my fat in my diet, and that a lot of people would need to incorporate fasting. That's kind of the message I'm getting, because like the carbohydrates raise your insulin the most. Well, scratch that. The processed ones do. The processed carbohydrates. Of course, I think you can eat too many unprocessed ones too. I mean, depending on your body type and all of that. But so since both protein and fat can protein and carbohydrates in general can increase your insulin. And then staying away from refined carbohydrates is good, but I'm thinking that a lot of people would probably need to increase their fat. That's just kind of what I'm thinking but like for myself, that I might need to do that. And it's hard to get it, you think about getting in a lot of fat, and if you eat stuff that's naturally fatty anyway, you do get like a 50-50, but I'm thinking that probably you need to, I'm just leaning toward that maybe we would need to go further with it.
But
what do y'all think?
so sorry. The problem that I have with that though is like in what I'm more, trying to think in like a primal mindset, right? And
Mhm.
in what situation would our ancestors ever have just like drank a bunch of fat or
Oh,
like
no, they
ate a
wouldn't.
bunch of butter just by itself? You know what I'm saying? Like it I
But they
just
probably
feel like,
use it for cooking.
huh?
They probably use it for cooking.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, when was butter invented?
Or tallow, maybe like other
Tallow.
kinds of fats, like tallow and lard and stuff like that was
Yeah.
used traditionally. And I think
I
we
just don't
really,
think they sit around eating. I don't
oh,
necessarily think it's great to
No.
sit around eating sticks of butter. I think
I
that's,
think it was like what came with the food naturally.
yeah,
They
like
ate a
what
lot
comes
of
with the food naturally, I think is
fatty
good.
stuff, and a lot of times too, depending on what you buy, like I get as much as possible the 70/30 hamburger, for example. But a lot of it, I mean, a lot of people get that 90/10. They don't want any fat in it. And then likewise, if you buy cuts of meat, I mean, a lot of times they trim a
They
whole
trim
bunch
a
of the
lot
fat
off.
off.
And I mean, think back about like what animals they would have been eating back then. Probably a lot of deer, a lot of animals that really weren't super fatty.
Mhm.
So while I think it's good to add fat for me, to heal my metabolism, I think if you're a person that's starting out with like a healthy situation, maybe not so much. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Well, I cut
Yeah.
back a little bit on the amount of fat that I was eating, um, because I already have plenty of fat on my body, and so but I'm kinda wondering if there's a difference between someone like me, who I still have probably close to 100 pounds to lose, versus somebody who's at their ideal weight or at a much more healthier weight when it comes to fat, because I
Yeah.
just keep thinking back to my when I was on the ketogenic diet, them talking about, the ketogenic people talking about if you have excess fat on your body, you already have enough fat to
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
here's
fuel
the
your
Like the
thing though.
situation for Carrie is going to be different than
Mhm.
for
But
you and
eating
I.
fat, the body doesn't process fat to give you fat, though. You see what I'm saying? I
Yeah, but
mean,
she's
the
I
saying like eating your own fat versus,
although,
well,
you know what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying?
but
I know
see,
there's definitely a difference between dietary fat and adipose tissue, because when you
yeah,
eat dietary fat, it doesn't add adipose tissue. But I remember when I was doing keto, they were saying that if you as you lose fat, your body will use that fat. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's what your body's just chomping on its own fat.
I never researched that out to see what the research was behind that.
yeah. I'm just thinking, and I'm nowhere near an expert. I mean, I've listened a lot to Dr. Berry and that documentary that they did a while back. He had a disagreement with somebody that was on there because one of the other doctors, because they were saying that the person, um, something about eating too much fat would make them
Personal
fat.
fat threshold was what they were
Yes, the
talking
personal
about.
fat, that's it.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you,
it was
Tim.
let's see here. It
Was it
was
Maria
yeah,
Emmerich? Was it
Maria
her?
Emmerich, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I actually, I'm still not quite 100% sure, but I'm kind of leaning toward Dr. Berry's theory because metabolically, the way your body processes um, carbohydrate and protein versus fat, the amount of fat if you eat more carbohydrate, that keeps you from using your own fat versus
That makes sense.
eating fat.
Yeah, so this would involve fasting. To eat your
Yeah.
own body fat, you're going to have to
Hmm.
fast, which
Yep.
goes back to what Jason's getting ready to tell us anyway.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I can understand for somebody, especially now, I mean, it could go way deeper than this, and I just don't have that understanding yet. I'm trying to gain as much understanding as I possibly can to help myself and eventually others. But for somebody like you, Carrie, you are on the thinner side. You're probably more metabolically healthy than I am. Okay. I have at least, let's see here, I'd say I probably have at least 40 pounds I could lose easy. Um, and so, I'm going to need to tweak things a little bit differently to kind of trick my system into getting back into a healthy state. If I had started this at 21 when I was, young and probably pretty healthy, it would be, it would be a different situation. The ratio might have been different for me at that time.
Well, when it's
Now,
decades
that
of
being
messing with your
said,
hormones.
there are also people who add more fat, especially women, and they find it does help, but I just haven't experimented with that on my own yet. So I'm just speaking from experience.
And it's important to realize we are all different, and we might, like, one rule isn't going to like be 100% for everybody. Maybe you need to add some fat, but not as much as I might need to add, for example.
Right.
Or, so people have to tweak. They got to do their N=1 experiments, and that's kind of fun.
Okay, I did want to comment on this before we go too fast or too far past the stevia. So I recently learned that there is like a gene that makes stevia taste absolutely horrible to some people.
Really?
So, yeah. I thought that was fascinating.
So is that the same as like it having the aftertaste, or is it different?
I don't know.
'Cause I know
I
I
just
know for
heard
me-
that, and I was like, maybe that's for me
Wow.
too, because I don't love it. Like, I
I just don't like the aftertaste. Like, it doesn't taste bad to me, but then it has this
That's like,
bad aftertaste.
okay.
I just think it just isn't great at all. So as soon as I heard that about it raising your
Wow,
insulin
that's
higher than
interesting.
table sugar, I was like, get that crap out of here.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I don't need it.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of people who are still, trying to lose weight and eating carnivore, but they're drinking a lot of like drinks that have those sugar replacements, like the stevia, the Zevia drinks.
Yep.
I know occasionally I
Those
have
are
one
so
of those.
disgusting. I got some of those when they had like a coupon at Kroger where you could try it out. Basically, they would give you the full price of the item. And I was just like, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever tried in my life. I don't know. I'm not a flavored water type person as far as,
and then you don't
like I like flavored water like Crystal Light, but I don't like the subtle flavored water. It just like, I just would rather drink regular water.
Yeah. Well, it was amazing to me, all the studies that he listed on page 171. He just talked about study after study after study that associated artificial sweeteners with weight gain.
Yep.
And
it's insulin.
It's the insulin.
Womp, womp.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's not just weight gain. So he mentioned the risk of, heart disease. He said that there was this Northern Manhattan study that said there was a 43% increase in risk of vascular events, strokes and heart attacks with drinking diet soda. That was so surprising. And metabolic syndrome, which of course would make sense. But yeah, it's not just obesity that you're at higher risk for. It's even
and increasing the cravings too, because then you find that you're wanting to eat more because you're not satiated, because you don't get the glucose increase along with the insulin increase, so the cycle's not completed. And that was I was like, no.
Yeah,
and
as
I said, glucose actually, when you eat glucose, it's not great for you, but at least it completely satiates, completely takes care of that little gnawing feeling that you have.
Right.
But when you drink sweet things that are artificially sweetened, you just keep wanting more and more because your body hasn't reached that satiation point.
It doesn't trigger the brain.
Yeah.
Like glucose will trigger the brain. But
it doesn't trigger those chemicals to be released.
Because the American Diabetes Association, he quoted them saying that the foods and drinks that use artificial sweeteners are another option that may help curb your cravings from something sweet. And they said that, but that was not evidence-backed.
No, it wasn't. They say a lot of things that aren't evidence-backed.
Another example here of our agencies just spewing out nonsense.
I mean,
they don't have anything to back it up.
They
And
just want it to be true.
I don't know about you guys, but like I watch what I say very carefully on YouTube because I feel like if I don't have evidence to back up what I'm saying, it could be harmful to somebody.
Right.
But our government and all of these different agencies, they just like, oh, 5 of 6 doctors recommend. Like I feel like they just like flippantly say stuff all the time.
So here's another thing that may explain that. I think we already knew this, but I just kind of put crazy in the margin next to this quote on page 173, because he said a full 83.3% of studies sponsored by food companies did not show a relationship between sugar sweetened drinks and weight gain, but independently funded studies showed the exact opposite. 83.3% showed a strong relationship between sugar sweetened drinks and weight gain. So who's paying for the study?
And I can't believe it's still legal. Like it's so messed up that that's legal for these companies who are willing to pay a crap load of money just to get studies to say whatever they want them to say. And I can't believe that's still legal, that we can that we put those studies in the same bucket with the actual legit stuff.
Well, and here's the thing that gets me is that it passes peer review.
Yeah.
How?
Because that's the
but
whole
these
point
people
of
are
peer
all
review.
on these boards, though. This is the thing. They're all on the pharmaceutical company boards or on the food company boards, or they've consulted with them, and so they're all in bed with each other.
Yeah.
So
it's like the good old boy system, only not the country boys. It's
because the whole thing with the whole purpose of peer review is to get independent people to review it and validate the results of the study. And so all these studies that are biased, sponsored by the food manufacturers, and then they're peer reviewed, and the peer review, it passes peer review. So that means that the people that they're using for the peer review are also biased. So what can we really rely on?
Not much. I mean, you just have to look very
our own research. They say, oh, individuals can't do research. Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay, you call it studying then. I'm doing my own studying, and I'm going to base my decisions for my life and my health on that, and not on stuff that I don't have any evidence for.
Yeah, and it's sad when lay people need to learn how to read clinical trials and understand them.
It really is.
If they're hard, I mean, they're hard to understand even when you have medical knowledge. You got to be really good at statistics and understand statistics really well.
And when our medical system is full of people who are in such poor health themselves, myself included, okay, I'm improving that, but clearly we don't have the secret either. So, I don't blame people for being like a little leery of listening to, just anybody for medical advice, even doctors and nurses. I don't blame them at all. Like I want people to understand that if they ask me a question, I'm going to try to do my best to look into things as a whole and not just take something that I learned in nursing school 22, 23 years ago.
Yeah. And encourage them to educate themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, this was just so surprising. All of the things that elevate blood sugar or insulin levels, and they're artificial, and they don't really have the impact on glucose. So unbelievable. This was a crazy chapter.
It really was. Like anybody who is not reading this book along with us, I highly encourage you to go back and read this book on your own. Yeah. It is eye-opening, and there's nothing that we can say in a 1-hour period each week that's going to actually give you an idea of what the actual information that's in this book is. There's so much good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And then you also, like I have found, and I know I've heard you all say before too, that you have to just go back and reread it sometimes to just really fully get it. So
yeah.
Yes, in an hour going over 3 chapters, it's really difficult to do, especially when there is so much just like processes, body processes and methodologies and the medications or just whatever it is he's talking about, the process, the metabolic process or just whatever, just going back and understanding the flow of how things work. So, but I definitely recommend that anybody out there who hasn't read this book, they need to. I really
Yeah.
recommend it.
Oh, yeah, it's a resource. I think it's one of these things you need to keep in your library, and
Mhm.
it's definitely a resource. And I know, Kara, you were talking about the reward center of the brain, and I know he mentioned that they did these functional MRI studies, and they compared. Well, this one he mentioned compared glucose with sucralose, and I know sucralose is a really common, supposedly healthier,
Mhm.
Now
substitute.
sucralose, that's oh, what's the name of it? What is
That's
the name? It's the yellow one.
Yes, yes, I know it. I should
How
know
come
it.
I can't think of
I
it?
it's
That's
been a
the
long
one I
since I've
like to
used it.
use.
But yeah,
It's my favorite,
it
but
says
I quit using
that the
it.
brain, the brain perceived an incomplete sense of reward
Splenda.
by sensing the sweetness without any of the calories. Whereas the functional MRI study showed the glucose actually activates the brain's reward center fully, but not the
Splenda.
sucralose.
Sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
Splenda. Somebody in the comments said which
Splenda,
one it
yes,
was. Yes.
yes. And so the incomplete activation could stimulate cravings for sweet food to fully activate the reward center.
Yeah.
So it's not good for you at
Yeah.
all.
So B Dog, you know what this reminds me of? You know, the 12 Days of Christmas song. That's what I feel like with Jason's book. Like on chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Okay, now I'm gonna add chapter 4, but now I gotta go back and chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. You know,
Yeah,
like each
seriously.
time I have to go back and like listen to the chapters before so it'll kind of tie together. And I mean, I listen to every single I listen, and I also have the Kindle version so I can read it as well as we go along. But I listened to it 3 times, and on third time I'll take notes, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's a lot of information. It's very,
Yeah.
you know, heavy on the science. And this is from, you know, we've got we have experience with like science and nursing and studying stuff and you know, medical
Yeah.
related, and it's
And we
it's way
still have
above my
to
head.
read it more than once.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's way more than anything
We
we
didn't
learned.
study this in nursing school.
We sure didn't.
Yeah. Well, and for those who say, well, just do a little bit, it won't hurt you. I don't think he would agree because he said small amounts of glue won't kill you either. That doesn't mean we should be eating it.
Right. This
True,
is
true.
true.
I had to
This
laugh.
is true.
Although I have to say, sometimes I have to decide that I'll have a little bit of forever chemical if I want something to eat at work. The other day we had like the only thing I had to put my I had basically pizza toppings. Everybody else had pizza, and we got like a little bowl, and it came in aluminum foil, so you can't heat that up in the microwave. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to eat some forever chemicals today, you know, because I can't eat this cold. Oh, all right. So where do we want to go from here?
So what, chapter 16?
Yeah, and I've got fiber. I'm just not sure how. I mean, I understand what he's saying, and scientifically, it's correct in that. Well, we can get into what he's saying, but I still am not sure how necessary, because I think if you're not eating those carbohydrates, you don't need the fiber. But that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Yeah.
he talking about the carbohydrates and the like having it with the fiber. I mean, obviously he's
Yeah.
only talking about insulin. I mean, when we in the carnivore community, when we talk about carbohydrates and plant-based products, we're talking about more than just how does it affect our insulin levels. We're talking about neurotoxins and the different
Mhm.
things that could affect us in other ways, whereas he's strictly talking about how it affects your
Yeah.
insulin levels.
But
So
basically, he did say something to the effect of, so if you are eating things that have that it's the poison with the antidote, basically. But if you're just
Right.
eating protein and fat, you don't need the antidote, which would be fiber.
Yeah.
So our body
Right.
knows how to deal with that, you know?
Right. That when you combine the fiber with the carbohydrate, it lowers the insulin spike.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. So it says where whole unprocessed carbohydrates virtually always contain fiber, dietary proteins and fat contain almost none. Our bodies have evolved to digest these foods without the need for fiber. Without the poison, the antidote is unnecessary. Here again, Mother Nature has proven herself to be far wiser than us. Removing protein and fat in the diet may lead to overconsumption. There are natural satiety hormones that respond to protein and fat. Eating pure carbohydrate does not activate these systems and leads to overconsumption. For example, the second stomach phenomenon, where you're completely full and somebody says, "Oh, but do you want dessert?"
Yeah, you want some banana pudding? Sure. Oh yeah, this time of year too. It's like,
Yeah.
So I just have to tell myself none. I can't even have a bite. But that was my Achilles heel dessert.
Ice
And
cream
then
was
he
mine.
went on to talk about vinegar, which I found very
Mhm.
interesting, because often I think people in the keto and carnivore community are quick to dismiss vinegar and apple cider vinegar, even though they actually do help to lower blood sugar and insulin. It says as much as 34% if you take it before or taken with a high carbohydrate meal. And I've always known that, because I know how my body responds to it, but sometimes it helps to see it in actual
Yeah, that was actually
work.
kind of surprising that just adding vinegar would really lower the glycemic index. So he even talked about like potatoes, and which we kind of consider to be, those starchy vegetables that are not good for us. But if you add vinegar, it said that both the glycemic and insulin index were reduced by 43 and 31% respectively. So just adding the vinegar to whatever carb lowers that response in our bodies, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And it's also, I mean, it's just confirming to me, because I could tell when I used to take shots of apple cider vinegar. I know they say not to do that. It's
No,
not
I would
good.
do that too.
And I
I still
love
do
it.
it.
I love to do it. Like, I
Me
quit
too.
doing it
I
because
love
I
the
was so
taste
afraid
of
I
it.
was going to hurt myself, but, going to burn my esophagus or mouth or what. I don't know. It sounds silly to me. People eat it on their salad. It's obviously not
Mhm.
harmful to do that, but, and you have to do it just right. You have to hold your nose, because if you do not hold your nose, it's not going to feel good. But
Yeah.
anyway, every
Yeah,
time I
don't
would
get
do
it on your
that,
teeth. Yeah,
yeah,
you don't get it on your teeth. You have to just like seriously do it like a shot,
that's what I
like
did.
you
I
were
did it in an
shooting
actual
whiskey.
shot
Me
glass,
too. Yeah.
and I can't imagine stringing that out for a whole cup of water. Like, no, I'm just gonna do that and then take me a big drink of water. But I mean, I could always tell that, I had quicker satiety with it. And then also it just I felt like it made my intestines feel better. Like I used to get a lot of stomach aches and stuff. I don't really get those anymore, but I just felt like it was good. It just felt good.
Yeah.
Well, and people have been using the fermenting and the vinegar process for, thousands of years to preserve, because they knew that the food, somehow they knew that the food was not good or healthy or whatever without it. So I think there's something to be said about, that our ancestors did know a lot of things. Probably a lot
Yeah.
of it's trial and error. I guess all of it was, but
Yeah. And there's short-term studies, not, he said no long-term studies for the use of vinegar and weight loss, but short-term studies suggest that vinegar may help reduce insulin resistance. So there's definitely some, some evidence behind that. I wanted to go back to, I know we skipped over quite a bit, but I wanted to go back to where he's talking about wheat.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of interested in how he associated the prevalence of celiac disease with the change in the wheat, that we now have these dwarf varieties, and
Mm-hmm.
and it all started based on these people who believe that, concerns about overpopulation back in the 1950s, and that, like, how are we going to feed all these extra people? So they just, did all these, created a new higher yield wheat variety, and that's how the dwarf wheat variety came. But since then, it says the prevalence of celiac disease appears to have quadrupled. So,
Yeah,
like,
and those new strains have not been or they weren't tested on people beforehand, so nobody really
yes,
knew.
yes,
Yeah.
he says they were not tested for safety, but were merely assumed to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Holy, how often
So
does
we
that
were the
happen?
guinea pigs.
We're all guinea pigs, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
really.
it just goes to show the mindset. Like, you can tamper with nature and create things that nature doesn't create on its own, and then automatically just assume it's safe. What? Because it looks like this a grain of wheat.
And really, when you actually look at it, it doesn't really even look like it per se. Like the seed heads are huge and the stalks
Right.
are tiny. I mean, it doesn't look like traditional wheat at all.
Yeah.
It looks like a mutant.
And yeah, now it says an estimated of 99% of all wheat grown worldwide is dwarf or semi-dwarf varieties. So you can't get away from it now.
No.
Yeah.
I I wonder if before this, people were healthier when they were, even with eating wheat products.
I think they were. I
You
think
know,
they were healthier.
Yeah, and I mean, there wasn't so much in everything. Think about when you are ultra processing. I mean, you're not just grinding it down to where you can make bread out of it, but you're, grinding it into oblivion. So where it's so powdery thin and removing all the fiber and everything and making these ultra processed foods. I mean, that's such an overdose of something that has such a high glycemic, index, or, it's just
yeah, and they're
ridiculous.
machine ground now and not stone ground like they used
Yeah,
to be.
exactly.
Before I was carnivore, I actually quite a bit made my own bread. But I actually bought the wheat berries, which I'm sure were probably the dwarf variety, but I bought my own wheat berries and I ground them myself and made my bread. And it was, it never sat poorly on my stomach. And I have a lot, my gut reacts to a lot. And I noticed that and maybe it was just the fact that it was ground not quite as fine. It was still
Mm-hmm.
pretty good, but it wasn't, and the fact that it was the whole wheat berries, I don't know. It was something about it that just sat better on my stomach than regular bread.
And just a quick note, if anybody is interested in getting into detail about the whole history of the genetically modified wheat, read Dr. William, well, crap. I just went
Is
blank
it
on
that
his
movie?
name.
Is it the book called Wheat
Are you talking
Belly?
about Wheat
Yes, the
Belly?
book is Wheat Belly.
Yeah.
Yeah, William Davis. Thank you,
Yeah.
William Davis. Um, I've got all of his Wheat Belly books, and they are just really good. But he really delves into just the history of the agriculture in general, and then he goes into like the Egyptians and that wheat versus then the changes that were made historically to wheat and
Talking
the
about a book that is hard to follow. Oh my God. Like, you have got to concentrate every minute of that book because
yeah.
it is such a science packed. Yeah, he's super smart.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. But yeah, he talks about the fiber being an anti-nutrient. Yeah, and the carbohydrates being the toxin and the anti-nutrient, kind of like the antidote.
Yeah.
I thought that was an
Mhm.
interesting way of putting it. Like the
Yeah.
fiber is the antidote to the carbs. So if you have them together, then it doesn't have as much of an impact. And of course, from our perspective, we're like, well, we don't eat carbs. So,
Yeah.
it's not even an issue.
I do think it's from what I've studied, it does seem to be truly an unnecessary thing to
Yeah.
consume.
Yeah. And there's definitely, I mean, he's again only talking about how its effects on insulin. A lot of people get really gassy and bloated with fiber.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
What-
it's funny, like after you hit a certain age for a woman, um, which is no certain age, it's just more of a time period. But we just, man, our body just changes in such a crazy way. Like when we get like pre or perimenopausal, it's our body just decides like, nope, you're not going to eat that anymore. Nope.
Right?
Sorry, you like donuts? Too bad. You're going to
That's
cough
so true.
constantly,
You want to
or
eat that salad?
you're
You're
going to
going to
swell up
bloat.
like a exactly. That's the crazy part is, I mean, a person could have a whole career based just on helping women to not feel like garbage during,
Oh yeah.
before, during, and after menopause.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very true. That's why I like Mindy Pell's.
Yeah,
She
she's good.
focuses a lot on women and has a lot about menopausal, postmenopausal women too. So she's a good resource.
I've
Although
got to check
she's not
her
hard.
out. I have not yet, and Nicole recommended her too. So I've had several recommendations. I just need to do it. I just need to look at her stuff. So
Oh,
thanks for the reminder.
she's fun to watch. So yeah, she'll keep your
Yeah.
attention. She's very energetic.
So,
Cool.
my Apex Odyssey said maybe those tiny ground particles are absorbed into the intestinal wall better than larger stone ground particles.
Yep.
So
He
maybe
talks about
so,
that.
especially with when you have, leaky gut syndrome, which a lot of women have around menopausal age. Your intestinal wall barrier is a little damaged and proteins start making their way through into your bloodstream that aren't supposed to be there. And then you start developing, an immune response to that because your body's like, what the heck's this? And it's not supposed to be here. And so, I mean, I don't know if that could contribute, but definitely wheat as a whole, like I that's what happened with me. I'm pretty convinced.
And he
I thought
compares
he
it.
mentioned that
He
in
Oh, he
there.
may
he
he
compares
may
it
have.
to cocaine. So when it comes
Oh
to
yeah.
like the
Yeah.
stone milling versus the fine powder, he said cocaine users will know
Yeah.
that very fine powders are absorbed into the bloodstream much faster than
Quicker.
coarse grain.
Mhm.
That's what allows for higher highs, both for cocaine and for glucose.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But I'm
grinding
talking
it
more
down into
about like the
finer
actual
powder.
proteins that your body would react to versus like the absorption of the glucose. Does that make sense?
Ah, I see what you're saying. The proteins themselves, like
Like the
what is it,
proteins being in
gliadulin?
parts where the proteins are in parts of your body they're not supposed to be,
Right.
you know.
Right. That's probably what's I was listening to an interview with Dr. Sylvia Clemens and Anthony Chafee, and she was talking about that. She does so much research in the area of applying just a meat fat based diet to various illnesses. And she was saying that her theory, I don't know how tested out it is that that's what autoimmune disease is all about, is these really, really linked to leaky gut and these
Yeah.
proteins getting into the bloodstream that aren't meant to be there and mounting an immune
I'm
response.
pretty convinced that's what it is. I've studied this a whole lot because this is all my problem that I've had it's all autoimmune symptoms, but yet I don't have a diagnosed autoimmune disease.
Mm.
So usually it takes years and years and years to get a autoimmune disease diagnosis. And by that point, you've probably already figured it out on your own and, done something to stop it or
Well,
hopefully done something to
I
make
always
it a little
thought
better.
the first time I ever heard you and your channel, I was like, oh my gosh, it sounds like my mast cell activation syndrome. Like I could relate to so many of your symptoms. So, you never know.
Yeah, I had questioned if that was the cause of some of my problems, but there are so many different conditions that are so similar,
Yeah.
and it's just like the MCAS didn't quite fit what I was experiencing, but I definitely think a lot of my symptoms were histamine related.
Mm.
But when you think about it, like your body's response, your body's response to the foreign things can stimulate a histamine response. That's part of it.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know. It's so exhausting and time consuming. And my husband's probably so tired of hearing about this. Like, bless his heart. He's
Yes.
over here in the kitchen. I'm like, he's probably like, I've only heard about this for 10 years now. And every time I would think I had solved it, I'm like, babe, I think I know what it is. I think I know what's causing me to be like this. It's this, this, and this. And he would be like, okay, next week, babe, I know what my problem is now. It was always something like a new thing. And now I just think it's just like it's autoimmune symptoms, and it's probably due to leaky gut and probably due to hormone imbalance. And we all know that that's due to what you have been eating, the garbage you've been eating for your entire life.
And sometimes if you can find the solution, you don't necessarily need a diagnosis.
Yeah, this is
Exactly.
true.
And the autoimmune diseases are all like one big continuum anyway. Like they only diagnose you with RA because you have this symptom of autoimmunity. Okay. If you have dry eyes and dry mouth, like I have, they're going to go down. Oh, maybe you have Sjogren's.
Sjogren's.
And then if you have problems with your spine, you could be diagnosed with
Ankylosing spondylitis.
Ankylosing spondylitis. But
Mhm.
now, and then that's not to say that you don't actually have that, but it's like what I think they don't really express to people is it's all the same thing. Like it's all symptoms.
Exactly.
It's just the way your symptoms are presenting of the same disease in a
that's
sense.
why so many people with autoimmune disorders find out that they have more than one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's the
They
same
always
one.
come in two.
I think it's the
because-
same thing. It's just, like you were saying, it just presents in
Because your
different
body doesn't know
ways.
what RA is. Does your
Right.
body know what RA or ankylosing spondylitis? No, your body knows that it is sick. It's turning on itself. It's got, it's getting proteins in places that it's not supposed to have them. There's just so many different little things that go wrong where it's just all like a metabolism. Your metabolism is broken and your body's sick and it's just screaming out for help, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah. True. My Apex Odyssey said that sounds like an episode of House.
That's why I chuckled.
Yes. I mean, I feel like an episode of House. I would go to the doctor and I would just be like, hey, doc, I'm one of you. Okay. So don't think I'm crazy because I'm one of you. Okay. I'm a nurse. And so I'm not crazy, but this. And they would just be like, well, have you tried some Prilosec? And I'm like, are we even on the same planet?
Yeah.
If I have convinced myself that if a doctor does not have the condition that they are treating, I don't want to see them. I just don't. They don't know what they're talking about. My doctor has autoimmune disease and she actually listens. She sits knee to knee with me and she puts her hand on my leg and she's just like, okay, honey, I know we're going to, and she's just the sweetest thing ever. But then she sent me to the rheumatologist who is probably, in his early mid-20s maybe. And he's just like, oh no, those are not sausage fingers. I'm like, okay, but this one's swollen up like 3 times as much, and it's been this way for 6 months for no reason. And, and then I have this. And he's like, he's not impressed because he's at a he's at a university hospital and he sees the worst of the worst and he's like, oh, get out of here, basically.
Yeah.
It's so annoying.
Yeah. And you have to fit their algorithm.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're evidence-based medicine.
Yes. Which we can see from the studies are.
It just works so well.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it
All
does.
right. And you know what the biggest problem is when they started splitting the body up into, not that the body's not divided up into systems, but you're a whole person and the systems all work together. And when you got, you got your GI doctor addressing this and you got your, rheumatologist addressing this and you got your heart doctor addressing this and they're not talking to each other.
Right.
I mean, am I the only one that sees a problem with this? Like,
no, I mean, I
just
used to talk to
mind-blowing.
patients all the time that would, working in a specialty, I heard that all the time. And I would always tell them, this is why it's really important to have a really good primary doctor. I told them that it's like a wagon wheel and all these specialists are the spokes, but the hub is your primary doctor. And if you have a good one, they're going to be in contact and keeping tabs on what all the specialists are doing.
But then if you have a
piece it all together,
one that normal one, I should say, usual one, they'll be like, oh, let me send you off to here. And it's like, wash my hands of that.
Wash my hands. Exactly. Exactly. Well, and a lot of people, I mean, honestly, like when you do, the specialists get a referral from a primary doctor, they are supposed to be reporting back to the doctor who referred them.
And I mean, they may, but unless you're in front of them in their office, like this is one of my rants recently on my channel is unless you make a second appointment and come back and say, hey, doc, I still have this problem. Do you I know you said my test results were negative, but do you have another answer for me? Or, I went here and can we talk about this now? Unless you prompt them to address it again, they're not going to call you. They're not going to call you
get
and
a
say,
letter
hey, Carrie,
that says, if you're still feeling badly, call the office.
They're not going to call you and say, hey, Carrie, we sent you to these two specialists and now we're putting it all together. And wow, girl, you're really sick. They're not going to do that.
No, you're right.
You have to prompt them again to start the whole process and hope they remember. They're going to have to review everything and not really remember it like you said.
They're not studying you.
No.
So you gotta be your own advocate. And honestly, I mean, the specialists, they're seeing people like every 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of patients, and a lot of times there's multiple steps that they need to go through to narrow down what's going on with you, but they'll send you a letter. So they'll do the initial panel of blood work or some imaging and it'll come back fine. And then they'll send you this form letter that says everything's normal. And patients will go, well, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. But and then
they just give up because it's exhausting.
They give up instead of
expensive.
Yeah, I always used to get after ask our manager, could you please ask the doctors to make sure in their letter to say we're not done yet?
Yeah.
And that is important. That is so important because I understand that frustration. I know someone who had been through something like that, and it's very difficult because you just feel like, because it's so vague or whatever, or it's like, okay, this blood work is normal. But like you said, there's nothing that says, well, next step is an MRI or the next step is this, whatever the next step might be, or we need to go into this. Yeah.
People think that because that test is normal, the doctor's saying that they think you're okay.
Yep.
Yeah. But in reality, with the doctors I've worked with, that's not the case. They're not saying you're okay. They're just saying we haven't figured out yet what's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that you get the results doesn't reflect that at all.
Yeah.
So everybody.
And it's usually somebody in the office calling you that knows nothing about medicine, and they'll say, "Oh, hey, your results were negative," and you're like, "Negative for what? What are you talking about? Negative? Like what?" And I'll say, can you read it to me? Can you read what you're calling negative? Because I want to know specifically negative for what? So where is this going to lead us now? So what's our next step? They never know. And then, then they might ask, and then it'll be like a game of phone tag. And
if they're good at their job, they will know the next step. But I mean, the reality is that the insurance companies are driving the order in which the doctors do things. They have to run a certain test because they got to rule out the most common causes of things. So they have to run certain tests, maybe do specific imaging, and that's what the insurance company is going to cover. And they're not going to
Yeah.
cover anything additional until they've done this step first. And that's just, unfortunately, the insurance companies are the ones who are making the rules about how doctors can practice medicine.
I think
That
there
is
needs to
true
be
too.
like more navigators in healthcare though. Like there need to be nurses that are in, you know, maybe case managers or whatever that are in charge of people on an outpatient basis. Like
There are,
somebody should
but
be
only the
calling
really
me and
complicated
saying,
patients. It's like
yeah,
only the
but
really
I mean, it should
complicated
be
patients.
for all patients. Like, if you have a problem and you went to the doctor for your problem, you shouldn't have to manage that whole,
Right.
you know, thing. Like, because they don't know how. Like, why would you? You're just a person that's not affiliated
You
to
know,
medicine
that's
in
a
any
very
way.
valid point because you're having to juggle between, you know, I know somebody there again who'd been through this, and I have to a much lesser degree, but it's like you have to juggle between this one and this one and this one. And as a regular person trying to communicate, and well, no, we have to do this first. And so then you need to contact so and such. And it's just this whole sort of a, so I agree with you, Kim. There really does need to be some sort of anchor that guides you through the whole process
Yeah, I
because
mean,
it is frustrating.
when it's
Yeah,
hard to navigate for a nurse, I
yeah,
mean, what does that tell
Yeah.
you? It tells me that the system is really messed up. You
It's
know, and
not
it
good.
just I get so heated about it. I can't help it.
Well,
It's
you
like
know,
my
and
soapbox.
having worked both inpatient and outpatient, there's such a big difference. If you've never worked
Yes.
outpatient medicine, it is hard to figure out. I felt like I was in a foreign country when I
I've
went
never done
to
it and I don't wanna do it.
outpatient. I ended up loving it, honestly, but your ability to help people in outpatient nursing is definitely significant. And so I think one thing a lot of people don't realize is that, and this is, I don't know, I hope I'm not speaking for all the doctors and out there that an outpatient, there are nurses. And so when you call, if you really want to discuss what's going on with your health, ask to speak to the nurse
Yeah,
because the
but the
nurse,
problem is it's like pulling teeth to get them to call you back. I've specifically called and asked on multiple occasions, "Can you have a nurse call me?"
do
And
they
it
have,
might be 3 days later, they might think about it,
do you get
think
a
about
call from
calling
a
me.
nurse or do you get a call from a medical assistant?
A nurse like 2 or 3 days
Oh,
later, you
I guess
know?
I've been really
They're
fortunate.
just so like
I've worked at places where we have like a whole nursing team and
I mean, I
they
don't
would
know what
just,
they have because I never
yeah,
see the nurse.
if you called and asked to speak with a nurse where I worked, your call would get directly sent to our nursing team. And we had like 5 or 6 of us that one of us would pick up the phone and
I
talk to
mean,
you right
just
away.
getting someone to fill my medications. Like when I don't take Adderall anymore because with my diet change, I don't need it. And, you know, anyway, so weaned myself off that along with other medications, many other medications. But when I needed that, I had to go every 3 months to the doctor.
Right.
Then I would have to call every single month to get them to send my prescription in because God forbid a controlled substance is, you know,
Right.
sent the prescription, you know, you have to have it sent every single time.
Right.
yeah.
And I used to have to pick it up every month. And it was just such a pain in the butt. And, you know, half the time they don't want to call you back. They act like you're some kind of criminal or something.
Oh yeah.
I'm probably over exaggerating because I tend to do that,
No,
but
you're not.
it's
I
You're
have
just
a,
not,
so
yeah,
like
yeah.
really, God, it's
especially if you're on
annoying.
pain medication,
Yep,
Mhm.
you know. Yeah. I
yep.
Yeah.
mean, it's true. You got to go through, I'm surprised they don't frisk you.
Oh yeah.
You know,
And
do
then
a
like
cavity search.
the littlest thing and you would get just the third degree like I'm like, do you think I want to take this? Because really
Right.
it sucks. If you need Adderall, it doesn't do to you what it does to somebody that's using it as a party drug.
Right.
You know, if you
Mhm.
need Adderall, I mean, I could take it and go take a 2-hour nap. It does nothing as far. I mean, it makes me a little more focused, but it makes me so focused that it'll make me forgetful. you know, and I've had so many years in my life of like systems, making systems to check myself, check, triple check, because I know that I can be forgetful sometimes, that I'm on, it gave me like an OCD almost, you know, like I would just check. And I would rather do it my way, that way, than take that medication and forget, you know, basically just be like a not on a log. That's the way I felt.
Well, there's so much that needs to be changed with our healthcare system, but I definitely have experienced, I guess, the good nursing side of it that won't frustrate you. So, because we did have a really good nursing team, and where I work for, I think, was very fortunate that we had a lot of good access to nurses.
Yeah.
But make sure if you're going to call and ask to speak to the nurse, make sure they don't get you a medical assistant, that you're actually talking to a nurse.
Yeah, that's true. I just recommend everyone have an advocate in healthcare, no matter if it's an outpatient thing, if you don't know enough yourself to navigate that, or especially inpatient. I say everybody that comes to the hospital needs to have somebody there with them to make sure things aren't repeated, make sure things aren't delayed, make sure things are addressed in a timely fashion. And, you know, we do the best we can, most of us. I know I do the best I can. I try to make sure that I advocate for my patient like I would my family member. But, you know, there's a lot of hands in the pot. So I have experienced having family members there that have even told me, oh no, they did that yesterday. And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you for telling me that, because I didn't know that, you know? And so, or they'll say, oh no, he usually has 30 milliliters of that, or, you know, just, they know little things because they're there the whole time. And so that's my biggest recommendation to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we got protein, chapter 17. So from all the maladies, I have to. Yes, I agree, Mike.
And Mike, I have pretty much, I don't want to say healed because that's a strong word, but if the symptoms are no longer there, I mean, you know, whatever you want to call it, right? That's all I care about. Okay, so protein. Where we want to go with this one? What was the most?
About how much it increases your insulin levels. You know, that like Carrie said at the beginning, all food increases insulin levels, and protein is definitely one of those. It does. I was hoping as we went into this chapter that he was going to say, just like fiber kind of offset the insulin spike on carbs. I was hoping he was going to say that fat does the same for protein, but it doesn't.
Well, it kind of does, because the fat, if you eat it like at a 1-to-1 ratio, you know, you're eating more fat. So there's a satiation. You're full. Yes, thank you. You're full.
Yes, the key is the satiation of the meat and the fat. It's because it still is going to spike your insulin. There was the one, was it in this chapter? Okay, there was the figure. We can actually go look at one of our slides.
Yes, let's look at the slide.
The figure 17.1.
Yay, bring out the slides. Let's see here. Okay, so
it was not that one, it was that one. Yeah. So he was talking about a study that was done, and people were fed 4 different types of protein. So eggs, turkey, tuna, and whey protein. And how it affected their insulin levels. All of it affected the insulin level. Whey resulted in the highest insulin level, but that the whole thing he was said it also affects your satiety. So the chart that he put here has to do with how much they ate 4 hours later when they fed them another meal. So actually the whey was the best. So he said that different proteins. So one of the things he said is you can't lump all the categories of protein together and expect that they're the same. Each one has to be looked at individually. So the like the egg and the turkey, the people who ate, again, they 4 hours later ate the most. So the big tall bar means they ate more calories 4 hours later. Whereas the people who had the tuna ate a little less, the people who had the whey ate even less. So there's the satiety factor is actually a real thing with what you eat and what type of protein even you eat as to whether or not you're going to be hungry later. So I thought that was really interesting.
That's wild to me. I would think that would be just the opposite. I don't
would
know.
think so too. I was really surprised at that. But he said that dairy shows the largest discrepancy between blood glucose and insulin effect. And whey comes from dairy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was
I
talking
don't know,
about
like
Well,
I
was
know
he
when
talking? Okay, wait a minute.
when I
Glucose
eat
versus
when I eat eggs for breakfast, I mean, I'll be full. Like this is just anecdotal, but I'll be full forever. Like I could probably go into the afternoon, 3 o'clock or so.
well, I'm the same way when I eat like a ribeye steak or something. I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
go like 16 hours and not be hungry. So I thought this was really, it was kind of surprising,
Yeah.
especially the part about the whey. But he was talking about the incretins and what it says that the whey protein and the meat. Now he didn't really include beef here, but he said it's cause significant insulin secretion, but they also like affect these incretins, which have to do with satiety.
Yeah. So he says the increased satiety, being full more, suppresses that insulin. So that's sort of the, what is it, the poison and the antidote, I guess, in a sense.
Yes.
With that,
Yes.
because it evens itself out.
Yeah.
See, eggs, well, they are really highly satiating for me.
Yeah,
I
they are for
can't
me
even,
too.
you know how some people can eat like 10 eggs or so at once?
Yeah.
I cannot eat more than, if I eat more than 3 eggs at once, I'm just like, oh, no, no more.
Yeah.
Absolutely no more. It comes to that point.
And it's weird because I used to have these protein shakes that were based on whey protein, and I'd get hungry within a couple hours. So they didn't really satisfy me.
What was
See,
it?
there's
I'm
the
sorry.
thing.
Whey
Whey, okay.
protein shakes.
Whey protein. Yeah,
was-
that's why I'm so confused by this because
I am too.
it really would be opposite, I would think.
Did they actually isolate just the protein, or was it like they ate a whole egg, pieces of turkey, a can of tuna,
Right.
and dairy? I mean, what is it that they actually? I wasn't clear on that.
I think
because
they mean like a whey protein shake or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but then
Well,
like,
you
what
see if it
about
says
tuna?
here.
See, it's weird. When you're comparing, I don't know. I was a little bit confused.
Well, and
about
also
that.
the amounts of
Yeah.
like if you're drinking a whey protein shake, that would be I see what you're talking about, Carrie. Like how is it? I mean, did they get like a total equivalent of
Mhm. Yeah, like what's the amount? What's going to fill you
Yeah.
up? Because
Yeah. We'd have to go look at the study itself and see, like, did they just eat only eggs or only turkey?
right.
Because I know that when 4 hours later, it says that they were treated to a buffet lunch. So we know that
maybe
Mhm.
4 hour
maybe
later.
they were so sick at their stomach from drinking that garbage whey protein shake that they like couldn't eat anything.
Exactly.
There
That's
you
kind of what
go.
I'm thinking. 'Cause I don't know.
Oh,
That's probably what it was.
that's
So
that's
this
what
may
I'm
be-
gonna go with.
This may be another study that we can't rely on.
Well, it's just, I
Exactly.
think we just need, my curiosity got the best of me on that one, because I'm like you, Kim, and I think you probably are too, Lynn. I mean, in that, like the eggs, for example, would just fill you up. I mean, I can't just sit and eat a ton of eggs. And if I do eat, like, especially like if I eat eggs and bacon, I can just go all day without eating anything else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I struggle with not eating enough on carnivore too. So that's something that I
I
have
do
to be very
too.
cognizant of. I have to really um, just be aware that I need to eat and just eat more, because it is very easy for me because I can eat very little anyway. Like, it was funny, Brett was talking about doing a fast. He's doing a 9-day fast. Who's your carnivore? And so he asked if I was in, and of course I'm like, well, I can go. He's like, you could just do 2 days. I'm like, yeah, I could easily do 2 days, but I'm just not sure that I really need to, because it's hard enough for me. I could easily go 2 days without eating.
Yeah.
And it would
I
just, it
haven't
would,
tried.
I don't think
yeah,
that would be that beneficial for you, Carrie.
yeah. So
You know, for you personally, I just don't. I don't
well,
know.
and
I
here's the
think,
thing: most people don't. They think of it in terms of just the other body types and stuff. And I'm just this weirdo. I'm an oddball, and I've always had these weird eating habits, and also, tracking in Nicole's journal really helped me too, because I was thinking I was eating more than I was. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, you didn't eat that much. So it was tracking it,
yeah.
but for a different reason. And so it's made me really aware of what I need to do.
It's
So
hard to
I
eat
I was
more
just
when you're full.
confused. Yeah, I was just confused about his chart and stuff, and like what exactly the people were eating to
And
to
Yeah.
get those
every
results.
study, like there's so many studies. Studies can say
Yep.
conflicting things. You can find a study to support anything. So I just don't place a whole lot of faith in that, in like one study like that, or I don't
Yeah.
know how many
Well,
studies it was. But
and my takeaway from it was kind of really the breakdown between the proteins is that they're not all created equal.
yeah.
The different proteins can have a different insulin effect on you, and they can also have a different satiety effect on you. His results in that study that he shared to seem to be completely opposite of what experience in real life. But
Right.
yeah, but I did look up, they were talking about the insulin index, which is opposed to the glycemic index. What did he say? It was some lady came up with it. Suzanne Holt created
Mm-hmm.
this insulin index. So I looked up, and this is just a chart that has, and it was like blurry, so I didn't make a slide out of it. So if you guys look up insulin index, and there's like on your images tab, you'll see all these things. But really, bacon is really low on the, as far as what will spike your insulin. It's like really, really low. And but the food they had on here, some of it was stupid, because like I tried to find like a steak. You could
Mm-hmm.
find a steak, but they had beef taco. Like, really, this isn't like, I would like to find one that has actual just individual food items.
Right.
But
Yeah. Wow, that's weird.
yeah, but then they had things like Frosted Flakes and Lucky Charms and all the
Oh
different
Lord.
honey bunches of oats and a pink mango frozen yogurt. And but the interesting thing was, and of course they had glucose, right? So glucose is kind of like you think would be the worst as far as insulin, but there were two items on this list that were worse than glucose. One of them didn't surprise me, and one of them did. So one of them was jelly beans, which I guess shouldn't surprise you because they're pretty much pure sugar. The other one that was worse than glucose is grape nut cereal.
Really? That's odd. I
Huh.
mean,
Yeah.
Weird.
So
But
yeah, I'm
I
gonna have
don't
to
know.
do
It's
a
just,
little more digging and see if
these
I
are
could find.
probably the same people that classify pizza as meat.
true.
Oh yeah. Well,
In some
I,
of these epidemiological studies.
I saw another
Yeah.
chart that had kind of like this one and it had beef. It had like beef lasagna. Like,
Mhm.
that's like a mix of all these different
Yeah, and you could
ingredients.
put a lot of different things in there too.
Yeah, like why would you even put beef lasagna in
I
on an
don't-
insulin index?
It's weird.
It just
You
I
just
just
have ground
people are
beef or
stupid.
a burger patty or a ribeye
Right.
steak or just something like
Right. Or
that.
like 3 ounces of cheese or,
Yeah.
this type of cheese. Be specific
Yeah, like
because then
Limburger cheese, whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
because then you can go and you can actually look at the individual ingredients of what you're going to make if you want to make a lasagna and see how that's impacting your insulin. But no.
Yeah, because we all know what would impact the insulin on a beef lasagna. Hello.
Pasta,
Yes.
but but whole grain pasta was kind of low on the insulin index.
Oh, because they want those healthy whole grains.
Yes, they do. I kind of question that too. That's
As was bologna.
This sounds like a bunch of baloney to me.
It does. Like seriously. Like who comes up with this?
well, I eat a lot of bologna. I have to confess. I eat bologna and liverwurst
I don't
and
think there's anything wrong with bologna
hot
on.
dogs and spam, and I eat Vienna sausages. I don't eat a ton of Vienna sausages, but I am saying that I keep some in the cabinet, and once in a while, like if I'm working and feel the need to eat something. Now, what I'm trying to do though is be more cognizant of just, okay, I need to stop and eat a meal, because I am one of these people that I can either work through the hunger and just not eat anything, or I'll go grab like just a little something to take the edge off, and then I won't eat for hours. So I have to work on that. But yeah, I
My
eat. But
boys
the
always
point
ate
is, I
those.
eat that stuff. I eat bologna, hot dogs. I've been known to eat a cold hot dog. Just go in there and grab one out of the
Nothing's wrong
refrigerator.
with that in my book.
Just eat a cold hot dog. Eat
Yeah,
cold
as long as
bologna.
it's a good quality one.
Yeah, and I do. I
Well,
get good quality ones.
and
Yeah.
as we call them, the Viennese.
Now the Viennese, there's
we
I
good
remember
quality
we
Vienna
gave
ones.
our
sausage.
boys the Viennese, and they all loved them. I think one of them didn't like them, but they would just sit there and
Yep, my kids liked
just
them
little
too.
babies,
Yeah,
little
yeah.
toddlers eating those.
Well, I was surprised when he said that the like oral glucose has more powerful insulin effect than IV glucose.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what?
because I think it triggers when it's in your mouth, it triggers the response.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's that.
Yeah,
It's
just
that.
tasting a,
Mhm.
Yeah, which is why he said that you can actually like put something in your mouth, swish it, and spit it out, and
Yep.
you will still have an insulin response.
So I
So
wonder if that is why you get the majority of your insulin response with sugar-free, like sweeteners and stuff.
mhm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because they're like 600 times sweeter than sugar or whatever.
That's true. You get the insulin response, but then the bad part is there again, it doesn't finish that whole cycle. And so you know what I'm saying? Because the whole thing doesn't happen with the glucose level going up, and all of
Yeah,
it doesn't, and
it
the
has no sugar to act
satiety.
on.
Yeah, and the satiety of the your brain realizing that you get the craving, or the craving is met for the moment, the satisfaction of getting it, and so it makes it even worse. And I think that's why it triggers the cravings too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it says your gastrointestinal tract functions like a second brain. And I know next to the brain, it has the most nerves of all the organ systems in the body. And there's definitely a gut brain connection there. But he talks about the incretins being in the stomach, and they'll stimulate and increase insulin levels with whatever food goes into your stomach. But then you have this cephalic phase where your body anticipates food as soon as it goes into your mouth and long before the nutrients hit your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will actually increase your insulin levels. So they actually did a study.
Just thinking about it.
Well, I swear for me, if I just look at something sweet.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real thing.
Yeah. Walk past that donut shop and just smell it, or the bread, whatever. Yeah.
Oh,
You
next
smell it.
thing he's going to tell us is that we've got these receptors in our nose. I hope not.
God. Yeah, that's probably next.
goodness.
Oh, I was going to tell you guys, my boys don't have their lesson tonight, so that's why I've just kind of let it go.
You're
Oh,
chill.
okay. That's cool.
So I don't
But he
know if
did
you guys have a certain time y'all need to leave, but I'm good.
But he did say dietary fat tends to have the weakest insulin stimulating effect. So that's good.
The weakest, yeah.
Weakest, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and on that insulin index thing, the fats were the very, very lowest. So that's good. And high satiety, low insulin response. So that's a really good combination.
And so let's see here. That whole incretin effect thing. What can you explain that?
From what I understood, it's that the incretin is released in the stomach when you eat anything. And the incretin increases your insulin levels. But they also the higher they delay emptying of the stomach contents, so it slows down glucose absorption. Depending on the food you eat.
Yeah,
So
it went into like really complex stuff, like GLP.
This was complicated.
1 and 2 and 3. I mean, it's so much, y'all.
Right.
And I think part of that is, what is it? Doesn't that affect, or Ozempic, doesn't that affect those GLP?
I think so.
Isn't that an inhibitor that?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So that's all tied in, because I thought anyway that was the same thing.
Well, those are the two incretin hormones. Yeah, and they stimulate release of the insulin by the pancreas.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got the impression that depending on which food you eat, it will determine like which one of those hormones is more, kicks in.
I meant to take notes on that part, but it's always like the last chapter where I kind of trail off and don't take as good of notes.
And he said that that's why the IV glucose doesn't have the same insulin effect, because it bypasses the stomach, and these incretins are in your stomach.
Okay.
Yeah. So the incretin effect may account for 50 to 70% of the insulin secretion after the oral glucose intake. So, yeah.
What else, guys?
It was definitely complicated.
Yeah, very.
I was interested too in that he mentioned several studies where it showed that eating meat makes you gain weight.
Yeah, he basically, I saw in this one part where he said that, or I remember that he said that basically any food can make you gain weight,
right?
Because of the insulin response. But the insulin response with meat, and especially with fat, would be lower. I mean, fat would be a lot lower.
He was also, I think he was also talking about meat in terms of like it, and he was talking about the mistake that people make of like isolating something in terms of just its macronutrient, that it's the thing altogether, that how your body reacts to all of it versus it's not just a protein or just a fat.
Okay.
They rarely ever come together. And so while those studies, I was kind of confused about that, sort of, but at the same time, I'm thinking, but then after he said that, I'm like, well, they were trying to isolate the fact, oh, well, these people ate a serving more of meat, but that probably has really, I'm thinking, nothing to do with the fact of gaining weight. But I could be totally wrong in my interpretation of that.
Did they control for the other things they were eating?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Then I don't know. I don't know, because I couldn't tell based on that. But then he did go on to talk about like the different diets and how people they realized that they thought fat was bad, And then they thought the carbs were bad. So then they went on high protein diets, and that those were that was dangerous or not dangerous, but I mean, it had bad effects on the body to do that. And then he went on to talk then about the low carb, high fat, and paleo diets, which ate the things in their natural form, and the foods aren't processed and all of that. So my guess is that my thought is that I mean, his main thing was about processed foods. I mean, that's like the big one.
Yeah.
Not to eat those, and not to eat the sugar and stuff.
Yeah.
That or the and about the insulin. I think those were his main points.
Yeah, those are
so
the
far.
worst offenders, is the processed food. A lot of people, if they just get those processed foods out of their diet, they're going to see improvements in their health. I mean, with me, I was such an addict that I had to go extreme. But I know not everybody has to do that.
Yeah, same.
I was just really surprised, though, like in his section about dairy, that he said that large observation studies do not link dairy to weight gain. If anything, dairy protects against weight gain.
There again, I don't. But he also was turning around, though, and he was saying that these were this type of studies that is that the one where he was talking about the type of studies that they were, I don't know, let's say the simplistic arguments, blah, blah.
Well, and I just wonder, like you were talking about, Carrie, like how much, like, were they looking at people who, I mean, how much could they control everything else that the people were eating? Do we know how controlled this really was? And because they're talking about people that ate like he said the highest intake of dairy was associated with the lowest incident of obesity and type 2 diabetes.
But for him to say associated, I think that those are observational studies done.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't necessarily have a cause effect that you can draw from it.
Right. You can say it's associated, but you can't say it causes, and that it would be a basis then for you to do further studies, more of a controlled trial type of a thing. But of course, then we know that those are real expensive and convoluted and hard to do. So
well, and people don't like doing these studies because what's the benefit to them? You draw the conclusion that you should eat more of a certain macronutrient or a certain food group that they can't really patent. So
yeah,
this is true.
So why do the study?
So let's do something else here towards the end. Okay. So at the beginning, I was asking what was the most shocking thing out of the chapters that we read. So now I want to ask, like, up to this point in our studies of this book, basically, and then you can also factor in any independent studies that you've done on your own. I mean, not studies, but like studying. What are your 1 to 3 kind of takeaways that you're going to apply to your life, or that you think, okay, yeah, this confirms I'm doing the right thing, or, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. For me, it's definitely the sweeteners. I guess I didn't realize the extent that, that we're mainly concerned about. I mean, I knew that the insulin, because I've heard other doctors, like specifically Dr. Berry, talk about getting your fasting insulin checked, so that the insulin is important. But because glucose is stressed so much, we've all, I think, found ourselves falling into it doesn't raise my blood sugar, not really realizing what the insulin is doing behind the scenes. And so for me, like, especially things like stevia, now I don't really eat a lot of stuff that is sweetened, really. Actually, really, I don't. The only thing, and I can't remember what's in it, but it's Element. I'll sometimes put Element in my water. I don't drink it every day, but I do have some, and at times I'll use it. So, but just to be more cognizant cognizant of the sweeteners and everything. And I mean, my blood work looked good. I mean, my fasting insulin was only 3.8, so it's doing good, but it's just, yeah, I did not realize that the stevia, that just blew me away, that it was even higher than the glucose. I was just floored. So that for me is to be more cognizant of the sweeteners.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm kind of very similar to Carrie in that, really having the realization of how the glycemic index really doesn't mean anything. And I mean, and even looking at the insulin index, at least the ones I looked at don't mean anything either. But, you know, but I think that I know where he's leading because he's all about fasting, right? And having those, to me, the big takeaway has been really making sure that I have those periods in between when I eat. So that regardless of how my food impacts my insulin levels, that I give them a chance to go back down to normal and have a period of time where my body is just at rest from food.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems like that's the biggest takeaway. And I kind of think that maybe, I mean, I know that the food that we choose to eat has a lot of healing properties, and a lot of us are doing it because we have things that we need to metabolically heal and other illnesses. But it makes me kind of think that maybe at some point, if I'm metabolically healthy, I may be able to start widening the choices that I have in foods, as long as I continue to apply the principles that he's teaching here and don't, but I'm gonna have to wait and see,
Yeah.
if the
Yeah.
carb addictions kick back in, then no.
Yeah.
Because
Mine.
my problem was I was grazing all day long.
Mhm.
I was eating a little bit at a time, but all day long I was eating stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Basically what you two said combined, those are my big two. I'm going to have to try to get the stevia out and the sweeteners. Not just the stevia, but I'm also like a big Crystal Light Energy fan, and I know better. Like, but there gets to be a point where you're like, okay, I have to make changes, incremental changes. I can't
Mm-hmm.
just say, okay, today I was this person that was eating 12 donuts, after dropping my kid off at school in the parking lot, just eating 12 donuts and then a whole bag of donut holes. Not really, but it felt
I
like
would
it.
have.
I mean, I ate the whole bag of donut holes for sure. But that person versus who I am today, it's incremental changes for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be for it to be sustainable. I can't just completely change who I am and overnight. But yeah, so this helps. I think that it could be possibly hindering my weight loss a little. Just keeping that whatever's in my Crystal Light, probably sucralose, keeping that and the stevia in my coffee, which I don't drink much coffee, but I like it. It's like a little treat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm replacing my little treats that I had before, because I was very much a food addict, where I would want like the best tasting thing that I could possibly get for that maximum, satisfaction level. And that's kind of like a drug, it's really, it's not a
Yeah.
healthy way to look at food, and now I look at food more as, sustenance and just something that I need to do to have my body do what I want it to do, basically. And then also, I'm starting to look at it as in where he was saying before that you kind of have to balance it out. Like if you have where you overdo the carbs one day, then you kind of need to have like a chill period the next day. It needs to balance,
Yeah.
It's not like a calories in, calories out thing, but it's more like a, you have gotten all these stores of sugar, packed it in, right? And now you
Mhm.
need to deplete those a little bit. So maybe you might want to try to fast for 24 hours or whatever. I'm definitely going to incorporate some fasting, but whereas before I was just like, I don't really see any point in fasting, and but I do see results from it when I do it. So I think I'll do that.
Yeah. Excellent.
This has been another great week.
Yes, it
It was
has.
packed. I know somebody earlier in the comments asked us if we know what book we're going to do next. And I know we've talked about it, but
Yeah,
if anyone wants to order, we should probably be starting to talk about it and just make a decision about what we want to do.
yeah. Does anybody have any suggestions for books in the comments? I know I provided
Yeah.
one suggestion, but it was in our private chat. So my suggestion was, tell me what it is, Lynn, because I think you were the one that
Oh,
told
that
me.
was the one by Mindy Pels.
Yes.
The Fast Like a Girl, and then Bubba said, "Sounds good to me." Something like that.
Well, Bubba he mainly comes to support me anyway, so because he's my buddy. But
Yeah.
I think that we could all learn something from that. And also, I think that it helps to understand, like, there's a lot of people that try to say that, oh, we're all human, we're all the same. No, we're not. Hormones do make a difference, whether people want to admit it or not. They do.
Yeah.
Especially around,
The only thing I struggle with,
menopause.
though, is that I struggle with this, though. Our ancestors, though, didn't say, well, she's in menopause now, so she's going to eat this. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I need to eat this way now because of my hormones. Or, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I just feel like we somehow, and maybe part of it is just due to how we've damaged our bodies by eating this garbage. And I guess that's part of it. But I just am like, people are the only animals that have just totally no clue and just totally screwed up, thinking that we're better than nature and that we can make our own foodstuffs and we know better than Mother Nature or God or however you want to look at it. And so I don't know.
Well, they may
But I'm
not have
interested
experienced the
in
menopausal symptoms that we experience in our modern life because they weren't exposed to all of the
yeah,
natural products that we get exposed to.
right.
Well,
I've
and a
heard that
lot
a
of
lot of
them didn't
people.
live that long either.
True.
Some of them did, a lot of them didn't, but the of course, there's all these people then that talk about life expectancy and stuff. And while it's true that there were more natural accidents and things like disease could get them, I mean, basically the big factor was like dying at the babies dying at birth. I mean, there was a larger
Or women
infant
dying in
mortality rate.
childbirth too.
Yeah, and once they made it through that point, they were pretty hardy. I mean, they found, skeletons and remains of people who, reached a more advanced age.
Well, and I
So,
think probably back then, I would think that they definitely weren't counting calories or logging food or
right.
anything. They were probably just like, maybe they were more hungry. Maybe they did have more of an appetite around their hormones, right? Around their, time of the month or whatever. But they probably just ate a little more, like they weren't
Mhm.
like conscious of it. Like, oh, I'm feeling a little, crampy today. I think I'll eat a candy bar, no. They probably
Exactly.
might have had a few more berries or something, who
Right.
knows?
Right. Well, I was thinking about The Carnivore Cure by Judy Cho as a possible option. And I mean, we do have the books by the doctors that we've got Sean Baker's book.
I'm fascinated, and I'm going to confess, for full disclosure, that I've bought several books that I have not read yet. Let's see, one of them is, let me get to it. No, not Geddy Lee's autobiography.
Oh, although that might be a good one.
That would be a good one. But Why We Get Sick by Dr. Ben Bickman. I
See,
just love him.
that was one of mine that I had on my old list. That was one of their
Yeah.
original
There's
choices.
also Toxic Superfoods by Sally K. Norton.
I'm not really,
But I mean,
into
it's really
that.
more about vegetables because it's about oxalates.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
I've got
then
mixed. I don't know.
let's see, Robert Lustig, Metabolical. That's one that I bought that I haven't read yet.
Yeah, I think that would be big on my list as well.
And then Brain Energy by Chris Palmer.
Yeah.
I really like him
He's
too.
fascinating.
Yeah, so those are 3 suggestions
Just the
I've
fact
got.
that he's going against, like, he's literally going against like a whole system of medicine up to this point. You know, he's really, I have a lot of admiration for that man.
I do too, and what he
hopefully-
says makes sense.
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get some good suggestions, you guys who are watching.
Yeah.
You know, give us some suggestions on what you think would be a good book to go into next time. We're gonna have to. We probably should make a decision sometime during the week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's narrow it down to, you want to, so this last time what I did was I narrowed it down to, I think, 3 choices, and then I had people vote on it. Do y'all
Oh,
want
that's
to
a
do
good
something
idea.
like that, or
Yeah, we could do that. Works
just
for
that,
me.
you know, that way if there may be other people who want to join, you know, and I figure
Mhm.
for each book we'll probably have a different group of, you know, participators. So
Yeah, and I wanted. So I guess we're gonna do what the last 3 chapters, 18 through 20, next
Yeah, but
time, or we want to tackle. I was wondering if maybe we should. I know we talked about the Christmas thing. If we want to do 18 through 20, I guess that's okay. But I was wondering if I feel like the appendix is packed full of stuff.
mhm.
He has multiple appendices, and I was thinking it would be a shame to like skip over the appendices. And I
we
don't know
can
how
do
you
that
guys
as a different, maybe a different
Yeah.
book, or a different book, a different week.
Yeah, so I don't know if you wanted to do like 18, 19 next
We
week
could-
and then do 20 and appendices the following, or do 18 through 20 and then have a separate one for the appendices.
Yeah, that'll be fine. I mean, we can do, let's see, well, what will next week be?
Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
A Christmas
So
Eve,
we
or
probably
we can
would-
wait.
I think we should skip next week just because
Yeah.
of the
Yeah,
holiday.
I think so too. Everyone's going to be busy.
Yeah.
And then the following week is New Year's Eve.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a live stream actually scheduled with not at the same time, but I mean I've got one scheduled on New Year's Eve, but it's earlier in the day.
Well, we could always take a 2-week break.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like we're
Yeah.
gonna,
No,
it's not
you
like
guys
we're
aren't
gonna
go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
It'll
think-
give us also give us a
energy.
good chance to go back and review too, because I just have to do that anyway. Just like you
I
were
do
saying about a
too.
partridge in a pear tree, you know, you going back and rehashing the
Good
old ones.
analogy.
Yeah.
So we got a couple
On
suggestions.
analogies. I don't know why. I'm always throwing out analogies to my husband. He's like, I don't need an analogy. I'm like, well, I need to give an analogy. So just listen.
That's a good one.
Someone
That's a good one.
suggested The Big Fat Surprise.
That's a good book.
By
I read
Nina-
it years ago.
I don't know how to
I've got
pronounce
it.
Why butter, meat, and cheese belong in a healthy diet. That sounds like a good one, and it's only $11.79.
Well, let's see what suggestions we
Dr.
get, and then
Berry's
let's talk in our group chat, and kind of throw ideas out there and see what we think, and then maybe we can come up with like 3 to have people vote on, or 2 even.
Yeah.
You want to do 2? Maybe since we don't have as many people that are like actually watching this, we could have like 2 choices, and then whatever people decide, that's what we'll do.
Good idea.
That sounds
Okay,
like a
so-
plan to me.
So skip 2 weeks, and then are we going to do the 3 chapters and then the appendix? Or are we going to do 2 chapters and then a chapter and an appendix?
I don't care. What do y'all want to do?
I mean, we can do 18, 19, and 20. That works for me.
Yeah, we
And
could
then
just do,
maybe
yeah, we could like wrap it up with the
Well, let me look and
appendices.
see how
Yeah.
many pages it is. I don't know if that makes a difference or not.
What'd you say?
I'm gonna look and see how many pages. 'Cause that might
well,
make a
like chapter 18 starts at 201,
longer.
and then
So 50
chapter
pages.
20 starts at 235 and ends, I guess, at 230 or 251.
251.
Mhm.
So we're talking about like 50 pages
50
roughly.
pages.
Yeah. So what do you think?
I don't know.
I mean,
lean
we've got
toward-
2 weeks, so
Yeah. So I think we could do 50 pages in 2 weeks. I mean, I know that Christmas is coming, but I mean, we're not going to be doing Christmas stuff the whole time.
yeah,
You know?
we're
Right,
gonna need
I'm
something to
easy.
do.
Or at least I'm not.
I'm easy. Okay, so 18 through
Yeah.
20.
Okay,
Yeah, it works for me.
January 7th.
Oh, that's my brother's birthday. Yep, January 7th,
Okay.
let's see.
2024. You need to write down the
Yeah.
correct year. Not going to be going back in time.
Mike says he doesn't have his appendix anymore, so that's it.
So
Oh,
he
there we
can't
go.
participate in
Sorry,
Yeah.
on the,
you have to sit out for that one.
yeah, you got to
You're
sit out,
done.
Mike. Sorry. All right. Well, I guess we will head out of here then.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to follow any of us on YouTube, I am Nurse Kim at Nurse Kimberly Lane. Carrie is at My Metamorphosis with an O, and Lynn is at Midlife Carnivore. So come on over. We'd love to have you. And I guess we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Very
And
good.
Merry
Everybody have a
Christmas,
wonderful
everybody.
Merry
holiday.
Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'm going to
Happy
be
New
working
Year.
on New Year's Day night. So,
And I will be seeing, just to promote a little bit, Saturday on my channel, I'm going to have Carrie on my channel for a live
yay.
stream.
And then me later.
After the holiday, Kim will be on my channel after then in the new year.
So are we
looking
going to do
forward
a live or are we going to do like a pre-recorded?
I like to do lives because I hate editing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
hate editing.
yeah, editing's.
So I'll
I
get
feel
to
obligated to edit for like other people's sake, but I don't like to do it very well.
Yeah.
Very
So I'll get to really dig into your guys' stories and focus completely on you guys and what your journey has been. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. All right. We'll see you guys. Bye.
All right. You all have a great Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Yep.
Bye.